Today we're breaking down how and why to use a power of attorney when buying a home and using that amazing VA home loan. If you wait on letting your lender and title company know that you're using a power of attorney, it can cause delays and incur additional costs for no reason, and we want to avoid all of that at any cost. And furthermore, not all power of attorneys can be used to buy a home. That's why it's important to understand the requirements and the process, right? So why do people use a power of attorney, right? It could be because you're overseas, you're literally not going to be at the closing. Sometimes people have work for travel that they cannot get away from. And sometimes the cost of traveling is a little bit too expensive. And a good example of that would be, let's say you're stationed in Texas, but you're moving to Arlington, Virginia. Well, the thing is that do you really want to pay for a flight to go to just to sign and only to fly back? It's easier and cheaper to do a power of attorney. And then there's also those situations where an emergency comes up. We've had that happen when someone got stuck overseas. And that's why sometimes planning it, right? At what point do you do it? As far as a power of attorney makes a difference. So there's really two parts to a power of attorney. It's notifying the lender and title company because they have a process to approve it. And then also we're going to talk about who prepares a power of attorney and what's required on that. So let's first break down notifying the lender and title company. So every lender is going to have a different process for approving a power of attorney for a VA home loan. The reason why that is that they all sell their loans on the back end to different investors, and every investor is going to have a different requirement, and the VA kind of makes it very loose. Okay, some lenders will also require to have a fully executed agreement in order to submit it to their power of attorney department. Most places will have a department for this, or their attorney, in-house attorney, will review these. Now, the other way you could do it is some will work with a draft like we do, which is much better because then you can make revisions to that document without additional notary fees and time. Like, look, it's not easy at times to be able to go to a notary, right? Some of you may be if you're living overseas, you can't go to if you're stationed in South Korea, you're not going to a South Korean notary, right? You need to find an apostille or an American attorney, like a JAG, right? If you're or you might have to go to an embassy to be able to do that, right? I've had people travel 4 hours to get to an embassy in order to sign documents when they're overseas. So that's why you want to ask them, like, hey, can we look at this ahead of time? And yes, lender's going to need the title company's going to need the original at closing. And guess what? They get lost. We've had it happen not too long ago. Title company made an exception, but then they took that risk on of doing a power of attorney with a copy and not an original, because that will have to be filed with the mortgage. So kind of keep all of that in mind. Something else that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to provide a letter of explanation on why you're using a power of attorney for the VA home loan. One of those things it could just be as simple as what we stated, right? I won't be able to make it because I'm traveling for work. We've had people on vacation. They've already planned this ahead of time. So they'll just be like, hey, we're going to give this person a power of attorney. And who you give that power of attorney is up to you. Just make sure that you're making the right decision doing so, because they can start opening up lines of credit, credit cards. We've seen crazy situations arise from people giving a power of attorney to somebody. And if you've been in the military, 100% you know somebody that has gone through that process. Now, if you're on active duty, it's a little bit different. You'll also need to provide a letter of explanation, but your chain of command will have to notify the mortgage company on the day of the closing that you are alive and well. Literally, they're just like, hey, let's just use myself as an example. Like, hey, Sergeant Piatek is alive and well, send. And then that's it. They'll put today's date, and then that's it. But we'll also capture that in the email itself, so we'll print it out and keep that for our files. If you're not on active duty, then it really doesn't make a difference. You just need that letter of explanation, and it just has to make sense. Now, the other part's going to be the title company. They also have to approve the power of attorney language. See, this is why this process could take so long, because the lender's got to approve it. Then it's going to be the title company. And that's why you really want to get ahead of that at least 2 weeks beforehand. Now, no. Or also people kind of get caught red-handed is if they're purchasing in a community property state where the spouse must sign the loan documents, even though they are not on the mortgage, they still require a separate power of attorney. So now let's talk about who prepares a power of attorney and what's required on there. So an attorney, so power of attorney, an attorney is going to, well, that's a little bit separate. I'm not saying that because of the attorney piece, but an attorney could draft these, or a JAG, then it's free, right? So if you're on active duty, you can do that. So typically it's going to be between about $100 to $200 to prepare one, plus any notary fees, plus you're going to have to overnight those documents, at least in the most secure way. You don't have to overnight them, but they have to get to a destination. I wouldn't snail mail them because they can take time to get to that destination. Right? Another big thing that has to be noted on the actual power of attorney is that it has to be for the purposes of real estate or included in a general power of attorney that includes real estate. So I'll give you guys an example. A couple of years ago, I was deployed overseas, and we're in the process of buying a place. So I gave my wife a full power of attorney. So I had the JAG use a standardized one, because you can typically what they'll do is they'll give you like a one that's pretty big, and then you can just X out the things you don't want the other person to have access to. But I didn't, right? Because we were in the middle of buying a property. So I made sure that I gave my spouse or my wife the ability to sign on behalf of myself for purchasing real estate. But then we'll look at other people's POAs that are on active duty and they don't have that language in there, which again, that just causes delays, and you want to get ahead of that, especially, and it's also, by the way, expensive when you're shipping documents from overseas back home, especially if you need them right away. And the cost just keeps going up. We had someone $260 to 2-day to send a package 2-day from South Korea. So just kind of keep that in mind, that's what's going to be required for all of this stuff, right? And then some lenders may have additional overlays, right? You may have a POA that has everything in there, but then the lender says, well, you need to have the property address included on that POA, which, again, you're going to throw your arms up and be like, why why is this happening? And that's why it's just important to ask your lender what's required on a power of attorney. Most of the time, they're going to know what the requirements are going to be. That way, at least they can give them to to the attorney for them to be able to draft that. If you're not using an attorney, ask someone you're working with if they have a recommendation for an attorney. A lot of times, any attorney, pretty much any attorney could do a power of attorney. Just figure out what that cost is going to be so you know how much money you're going to be spending. And again, you don't want to keep redoing them. That doesn't cost necessarily money, but that notary fee will. And that's typically $5. And if you bank with a local bank, they'll probably do it for free. You just have to schedule it with them. So hopefully you guys got some good info today. Make sure you smash that like and subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys soon.